The worst part wasn't the pain in my hip or the way my teeth rattled when I hit the kitchen floor. It was the sound of my granddaughter laughing while she held her phone up like she was filming a comedy skit. "Oh my God, Nana, you should see your face," she giggled, the cold linoleum stealing warmth from my cheek and the smell of burnt toast hanging in the air. Behind her, the morning light came in through the back door, sharp and white, making dust motes sparkle around her like she was on stage. My cane was lying just out of reach by the refrigerator, exactly where she had set it after teasing me for clacking around like an old lady 10 minutes earlier. My granddaughter filmed me falling and laughed, I remember thinking, not quite believing the sentence even in my own head. I was 68 years old, in my daughter's kitchen in a little town outside Des Moines, with one hand pressed into a puddle of spilled coffee, and the only teenager I'd ever loved like my own child was holding a phone instead of a hand. Maybe you've had a moment like that, where everything you thought you knew about your own place in the family tilts sideways, and you wonder when exactly you turned into a prop in someone else's joke. "Help me up, Maddie," I said, trying to keep my voice even. My hip throbbed, that deep, blooming hurt that feels like it's coming from inside the bone. She hesitated, still recording, and then I heard her say, "Hold on, I just want to get the whole thing." Her fingers tapped the screen, and I saw my own arm twitching on the floor in the reflection of the oven door. My cane, my good walnut cane with the curved handle my late husband sanded smooth himself, lay about 4 feet away, useless as a picture on a wall. "Madison Ann," my daughter's voice, sliced through the room like a knife, and both our heads snapped toward the doorway. Karen was standing there in her work blouse and a pair of mismatched socks, mascara half done, eyes wide. "Put that phone down and help your grandmother." To her credit, Maddie obeyed then. She shoved the phone into the pocket of her hoodie hard enough that the fabric slapped against her hip and came over, slipping her arms under mine with a strength I sometimes forgot she had. When I finally got to my feet, my legs shaking, I grabbed for the cane as if it were a railing over a cliff. The wood was familiar and warm, scarred down one side where my husband, Mark, had chipped it and then fixed it with a little heart carved into the dent. That cane had been an insult when the doctor first suggested it, a symbol I'd fought, but now it felt like the only honest thing touching me. Karen fussed over me, checking my hands, my face. "You're bleeding a little," she murmured, dabbing at my chin with a paper towel she'd soaked under the tap. The water smelled faintly of chlorine and coffee. "We should get x-rays, Mom." I told her it was fine, that I just needed to sit for a minute, that I'd fallen worse than this before. Pride is a stubborn thing, especially if you grew up like I did, in a house where my mother kept walking on a twisted ankle because we can't afford the doctor for anything that isn't actually broken. If you're a woman around my age, you probably know that voice in your head too. Karen kept glancing at her watch, torn between being late for the insurance office and hovering over me. "I can take her," Maddie chimed in eventually, still sounding more annoyed than worried. "It's not like my first period is even going to be on the test." Karen shot her a look, but then sighed. "Your grandmother just fell. Show some respect." Then to me, "Mom, I really think maybe we need to talk about getting you more help. This is the second time this year." Her eyes flicked toward the cane, and in that look I heard something I didn't want to name yet. more help. At my age, those words can carry a lot of hidden luggage. I ended up agreeing to urgent care just to make them both stop hovering. Maddie drove, grumbling about the early hour. The radio turned low to some pop song that sounded like every other one, her thumbnail tapping the steering wheel. I sat in the passenger seat, holding my cane upright between my knees like a flagpole, watching the town go by through the window. The same grocery store where I'd picked up applesauce when she was teething. The diner where Mark and I used to get pie after church. The memory came out of nowhere, sharp as the smell of bacon that used to cling to that diner's curtains. I saw Maddie again at 5 years old, hair in lopsided pigtails because Mark had tried to help, sitting on my lap at that very diner booth. She'd spilled orange juice on herself and burst into tears, and I'd rushed to wipe her off, shushing her, telling her, "Accidents happen. Baby, you're okay. Nana's got you." Mark had joked about getting a camera to record our little actress, and she'd squealed, "No," and buried her face in my sweater. It would never have crossed my mind to take that moment, her shame and her soggy dress, and show it to anyone. Back then, I told myself, this is just what grandmothers do. We mop up, we soothe, we hold. I never wondered who would do the same for me one day. The x-rays were clear. Just a bad bruise, a sprain, orders to take it easy and ice it. "And use that cane," the doctor said with a friendly sternness that reminded me of our old pastor. "You can't pretend you're 30 anymore, Ms. Walker." His name tag glinted under the fluorescent lights, and I found myself fingering the carved heart on my cane's handle as if it could answer for me. Karen picked us up afterward, all apologies and tension. "I'm sorry about this morning, Mom," she said, keeping her eyes on the road as we drove home. "Teenagers are idiots. You know Maddie loves you. She just doesn't always think." In the back seat, Maddie muttered something that sounded like it was just a joke. But when I turned to look at her, she was staring out the window, jaw clenched, earbuds already in. I told them both I was fine. I went home. I iced my hip. I made dinner that night like I always did, leaning on my cane as I moved between stove and counter, ignoring the way my body protested every twist. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans from a can, comfort food. Karen said thank you distractedly. Maddie ate on the couch with her phone glowing inches from her face. I caught a flash of my own kitchen floor on the screen when she scrolled past something, and a chill went through me. But when I blinked, it was gone. Maybe, I told myself, I was overreacting. Maybe you've told yourself that too, just to keep the peace, even when your stomach is telling you something different. 2 days later, I found out exactly what that flash had been. I was on the front porch, easing myself into the old metal chair with the faded cushion, my cane leaning against the rail. The late afternoon light was soft, the air thick with the scent of cut grass from the neighbor's yard. I liked sitting out there and watching the world go by, kids on bikes, Mrs. Leonard walking her little yappy dog, the mail truck rattling up the street. It made me feel like I still belonged to the town, not just to the house. "Hey, Ms. Walker," a voice called, and I looked up to see Ethan from next door heading up the path, his backpack slung over one shoulder, phone in his hand. He was a good kid, 16, polite, always helped me carry groceries if he saw me struggling. Today, though, he looked uneasy. "Can I ask you something?" he said, stopping at the bottom step. "Of course," I said, my hand resting automatically on the cane's handle as if I needed grounding. "What's wrong?" He shifted, glancing back toward his house like he was checking to see if anyone was watching. "Did you know you're, kind of like blowing up on TikTok?" It took me a second to even parse the sentence. "Blowing up?" He winced. "I mean, like a lot of people are watching this video of you. I saw it, and that's not okay." My ears filled with a rushing sound, but I forced myself to nod to keep my voice calm. "Can you show me?" I asked. He hesitated, then came up the steps and held out his phone. There I was, in a little glowing rectangle in my own kitchen. The clip started with my back turned, my hand reaching for the coffee pot. Someone had added music, some silly upbeat tinkling tune. There was a caption across the bottom. "Grandma fails are elite. Sorry, not sorry old people problems." I watched myself slip on the spilled coffee, arms flailing. I watched my own body slam to the floor, my cane lying neatly by the fridge, the handle with Mark's carved heart catching the light for half a second. The camera zoomed in on my face as I groaned, my mouth working around my dentures, my eyes wide and scared. Over it, Maddie's voice laughed, bright and mean in a way I'd never heard before. "Nana, you okay?" she said in the video. But she stayed back, capturing every second. In the comments underneath, little bubbles of text popped up, hundreds of them. "LMAO, she ate it." "Why old PPL always fall in slow motion?" "Now that's content." There were a few, just a few, that said things like, "Maybe help her?" And "This makes me sad," but the sea of laughing faces swallowed them up. My hand tightened on the arm of the porch chair until my knuckles ached. I felt my cheeks burn, as if all those strangers were sitting in front of me on my lawn, pointing and howling. If you've ever been humiliated like that, you know it's a very particular kind of heat, embarrassment braided with a grief you can't quite name. "I reported it," Ethan said quietly. "But it's still up, and like a lot of people saved it to their phones already." He looked at me then, not at the screen, his brown eyes worried. "I thought you should know. You didn't look like you wanted to be in it." I swallowed hard. "Thank you for telling me," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded thinner, older. "Can you send that to me?" He nodded and tapped a few things. My ancient smartphone buzzed in my apron pocket a moment later. That phone had been a concession last Christmas, a gift from Karen that came with a long explanation about data plans and how I had to learn to text. I'd mostly used it to get picture messages from church friends and medical appointment reminders. Now, feeling its weight, it seemed to change, not just a nuisance, but a kind of witness I hadn't asked for, but suddenly needed. After Ethan went home, I sat on the porch a long time, my cane balanced against my knee, my phone lying in my palm like a stone. I watched the video again, but muted this time. Without the music and the laughter, it was just a woman falling. The look on my face said everything my mouth didn't have time to say. I thought of all the times I'd caught Maddie when she stumbled, learning to walk, learning to ride her bike. I thought of the nights I'd spent on that very couch inside, her head in my lap while she cried over mean girls or bad grades, my hand stroking her hair. None of those had ever been turned into content. That night, after dinner, which I cooked again because I didn't know how not to, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone and my cane propped beside me. The overhead light hummed faintly. The house smelled of dish soap and leftover onions. I opened the clip Ethan had sent and paused it on the moment, right before my foot hit the coffee. Then I opened the little app where my bank texts came in and scrolled back. Rent transfer, utility payment, groceries, pill refills. Every month my pension and Social Security went into the joint account Karen had set up for simplicity, and from there, money trickled out in little drips that felt like they were feeding the whole house. It wasn't columns on a page. It was more like jars on a shelf in my mind. One jar for what I'd given, hours of childcare, hot meals, rides, co-signed loans. One for what I'd received, a room in the house, a roof, the illusion that I was needed. Another jar, I realized with a tightness in my chest, stayed mostly empty. That was the one for simple respect. When Karen came into the kitchen to grab a glass of water, I almost showed her the video right then. Almost. "How's the hip?" she asked instead, opening a cupboard with her shoulder, her phone already in her hand. Her hair was still up from work, little strands escaping around her face. "It's okay," I said. "Just sore." I watched her thumbs flick across her screen, the blue light painting her face. "Maddie's grounded for a week," she said. "I took her phone away for a couple days too. She's upstairs sulking about it." I nodded, but it didn't comfort me. Grounded for a week didn't feel like the right size consequence for turning my pain into a trending joke. "Do you know where she posted it?" I asked quietly. Karen hesitated just a heartbeat. "Mom, she deleted it," she said. "She told me. It was stupid, but she didn't mean anything by it. She just doesn't get how serious this could be for you physically." There it was again. For you, physically, not emotionally, not morally. "Karen," I said slowly, "she didn't delete it. It's still up. Ethan showed me." A flush crawled up her neck. "Well, maybe it didn't go through yet," she said. I held up my phone. The screen frozen on my body sprawled on the floor. Karen's eyes widened. For a second, I saw something flicker there that looked like fear. Not just for me, I realized, but for her, for what this said about our whole little arrangement. The first memory that woke me up later that night wasn't the fall. It was a song. The glow of the digital clock next to my bed showed 2:13 a.m., the red numbers exactly like the one Mark and I had had in our old house 30 years ago. Back then, when Karen was a teenager, I used to lie awake listening for the creak of stairs, the click of the back door. One summer night, she came home much too late, smelling of cigarettes and cheap beer, and I remember sitting at the kitchen table, my fingers wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea waiting for her. When the door finally opened, she froze like a deer in headlights. "You scared me," she'd said then, laughing nervously, setting her car keys on the table. "Thought you'd be asleep." I told her I couldn't sleep until everyone was home safe. It was a simple truth. Love and anxiety had been all tangled up in those late nights. Now, in the dark of her guest room, the little clock's glow made my chest ache. I was the one lying awake, listening for footsteps now, not of a child creeping in, but of someone deciding whether I was an asset or a burden. My cane leaned against the nightstand, a reassuring silhouette. Mark had given it to me 3 years before he died, pressing it into my hand with a sheepish smile. "Doctor says you should use this, Lori," he'd said. "Doesn't mean you're old, just means you're wise enough not to land on your butt." I'd snapped at him then, refused to touch it for weeks. One afternoon, when he thought I wasn't watching, he'd taken a little pocket knife and carved that tiny heart into the handle. "Now it's not from the doctor, it's from me," he'd said, putting it beside my chair. "You never turned down my heart before." Remembering that now, I felt tears slide into my hairline. Somewhere along the way, that cane had gone from feeling like a symbol of weakness to something else entirely, a quiet companion that had seen every step I'd taken to keep this family steady. Now, it had also seen me sprawled on the floor while my granddaughter laughed. Something in me shifted then, not in a dramatic movie scene way, more like the slow, quiet way a door finally closes when the wind changes. Tomorrow, I thought, I was going to talk to someone who wasn't part of this house. The next morning, after Karen left for work and Maddie for school, I got dressed in my nicest slacks and a blouse that didn't need ironing. I brushed my short gray hair until it lay as flat as it was going to, dabbed on a little of the rose-scented perfume I'd been saving for special occasions, and decided that today counted. Then I took my cane and my phone and called a number I'd seen on a brochure at the doctor's office, the local senior center. "We have a legal clinic on Wednesdays," the woman on the phone told me when I asked, her voice crisp but kind. "And social workers you can speak with any day. You're welcome to come in." I walked there because the bus didn't come for another hour, and the air outside was cool and clear. Each tap of my cane on the sidewalk kept time with my thoughts. That cane had leaned against high chairs and hospital beds. It had stood beside me at graduations and funerals. It had been there when I signed the papers to sell the house Mark and I built, moving in with Karen after he died because she said, "It just makes sense, Mom. Why pay for separate utilities? We'll take care of you." Back then, the idea of being taken care of had sounded almost comforting. Now, my stomach twisted at the phrase. If you've ever traded independence for the promise of closeness, you might recognize that particular knot. The senior center smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. There were flyers on the wall for bingo nights, exercise classes, grief support groups. I felt strange walking in alone, like I was admitting something about myself I hadn't wanted to say out loud. At the reception desk, a woman with bright red glasses looked up and smiled. "Good morning," she said. "How can we support you?" Support, not help. The choice of word made a difference, small but real. I told her I wanted to talk to someone about a family situation, and soon I was sitting in a small office with soft chairs and a plant in the corner. Across from me was a woman in her 30s with calm eyes and a notebook open on her lap. "I'm Priya," she said. "I'm a social worker. Whatever you share is confidential unless someone is in immediate danger, okay?" The words sounded like something memorized, but the concern in her eyes didn't. I nodded, and before I knew it, the whole story was pouring out of me. Moving in with Karen, the finances, the fall, the video. My cane rested against my leg like a quiet witness. When I showed her the clip on my phone, Priya's face changed from neutral professionalism to something sharper, sadder. She watched until the end, until the part where the camera zoomed in on my face and Maddie's laughter cut through. Then she set the phone down carefully on the table between us. "Ms. Walker," she said, "this isn't just a rude teenager moment. This is exploitation, and it looks like neglect. You fell hard, and she kept filming instead of helping you up. That's not okay, at all." Hearing someone else name it like that was like someone opening a window in a stuffy room. I hadn't let myself think those words. Neglect was for strangers in news stories, not for the girl whose diapers I'd changed. "I don't want her arrested," I said quickly, panic rising. She's young. Priya held up a hand. "Slow down," she said gently. We're not jumping straight to handcuffs, but we do need to look at your situation as a whole. Do you feel safe at home, physically and financially? That question gave me pause. Safe. Did I feel safe? Physically, most days. My hip hurt, and the stairs were getting harder, but no one had hit me. No one screamed in my face. Financially, I thought of the joint account, the fact that my name wasn't on the deed to the house, the way Karen liked to say, "Don't worry about it, Mom. I've got it handled," whenever I asked about bills. "I don't know," I said finally. "I thought I did. I thought, this is what we do. We move in with our kids. We share." But lately, I gestured helplessly. Lately, it feels like I'm there to fill in the gaps and be quiet. Priya nodded slowly. "That's something we can work on," she said. "We have legal aid lawyers who help seniors with things like power of attorney, financial exploitation, housing. Would you be open to talking to one?" I hesitated, then thought of the video again, of strangers laughing at the way my face crumpled. "Yes," I said. "I think I would." They squeezed me in an hour later. The legal aid attorney, Mr. Green, was a man in his 50s with a tie that had tiny sailboats on it and laugh lines around his eyes that didn't show much that morning. He shook my hand firmly, then sat down and asked me to start from the beginning. Talking through everything again was exhausting, but strangely clarifying. When I showed him the video, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and watched in silence. Then he asked me to play it again, this time pointing out the timestamp, where my cane was, how long it took before anyone helped me. "This is hard to watch," he admitted. "I'm sorry you went through that." He tapped a pen against his notepad, thinking. "Here's the thing, Ms. Walker. This video isn't just humiliating, it's evidence. It shows that when you were injured, your granddaughter treated it as entertainment instead of an emergency. And the fact that it was posted publicly with mocking comments, that supports a pattern of disrespect, at the very least." I flinched. I didn't like hearing Maddie talked about that way, even if it was true. Love does that. It tries to wrap gauze around facts. "I'm not trying to have her labeled a monster," I said softly. I need things to change." He nodded, "and we can aim for that." "There are a couple of paths. One is that we contact Adult Protective Services and make a report. That doesn't automatically mean criminal charges. It means someone comes to assess your situation, talk to your daughter and granddaughter, and see if there's neglect or financial exploitation. Another is that we look at your legal arrangements. Right now, you said the house is in your daughter's name, but you contribute financially." I explained about the joint account, the promises. He frowned slightly. "We can help you separate your income into an account that's just yours, and if your daughter has any power of attorney or access to your credit, we can review and, if you wish, revoke that. But I want you to understand something. You are competent. You are lucid. You have the right to decide where you live, how your money is used, and who makes decisions for you. A fall and a birthday number do not erase that." I felt a lump rise in my throat again, but this time it wasn't shame, it was relief. Someone was looking at me and seeing a whole person, not just an aging body to be managed. "If we make that report," I asked slowly, "what happens to Maddie?" Mr. Green leaned back. "Depends on the investigation. Given her age, if there are any consequences, they might be things like mandatory counseling, community service. And if we end up needing to go in front of a judge for a protective order, for example, that video will speak louder than any of us can. The judge will see exactly what happened. The phrase lodged itself in my mind. The judge will see. I pictured my granddaughter's face when she realized her content was playing not just on strangers' phones, but on a screen in a courtroom. For the first time since I hit that floor, I felt something like balance starting to tilt just a little back in my direction. I agreed to the report. I agreed to open a new bank account in just my name. Mr. Green and Priya both emphasized that I had every right to do so. I agreed to consider other housing options the senior center could help me find, like subsidized apartments for older adults. Walking home later, my cane clicking against the sidewalk, I checked the message on my phone with the information for my new account. For years, that cane had been the thing that let me keep moving when my joints protested. Now, my phone, this little slab of technology I'd resented, was the thing holding the key to the video that would help me stand up in a different way. Funny how your allies aren't always the ones you expect. The storm started 2 days after Adult Protective Services called Karen. First, it was a flurry of texts in our family group chat. "Mom, why is some social worker calling me about you? We could have handled this ourselves. You're making everything so dramatic." I didn't respond right away. I sat at the kitchen table, my cane leaning against my chair, my phone face down beside my cup of tea. The quiet of the house felt different now, less like a waiting room and more like a stage between acts. Maybe you've had that experience, where choosing not to answer is its own kind of answer, even before you say the words out loud. Later, I heard the front door slam. Karen came into the kitchen, cheeks flushed. "What is going on?" she demanded, not even bothering with hello. "Some woman named Priya showed up at my job. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" "She wasn't supposed to show up at your job," I said calmly. "She said she'd call." Karen huffed. "Well, she did both. And now she's telling me they're assessing for neglect and financial exploitation. Do you know what that sounds like, Mom? It sounds like I'm some kind of villain, after everything I've done." I looked at her, really looked at her, the worry lines, the exhaustion, the defensiveness. I loved her. I also saw clearly, maybe for the first time, how love and self-interest had braided together in her decisions. "They're looking at the situation," I said, "at all of us, including me, and they saw the video." Her eyes flashed. "That stupid video again? I told you Maddie was being dumb. I took her phone. I made her delete it." I picked up my phone and wordlessly pulled up the link Ethan had sent. The video played, the sound off, but the images unmistakable. Karen's face drained of color. I told her," she whispered. She promised. "Promises don't erase reality," I said quietly. "This is what happened. This is how your daughter treated me, how you let things be." She bristled, tears springing to her eyes. "I work full time," she shot back. "I'm doing my best. I thought you were okay here. I thought we had an understanding." I nodded slowly. "We did once, but understandings can change when the facts do." She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. "So what now?" she asked, voice tight. "You want to move out? Leave me to pay everything alone after I rearranged my whole life to take you in?" The guilt slid in right on cue, as smooth as a well-practiced line. "Karen," I said, choosing my words carefully, "I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. I've put my income into this house for 3 years. I've watched Maddie while you worked late, kept the house running. I'm not a guest. But I'm also not an object you can point a camera at or make decisions for without asking. She flinched. This is about that power of attorney stuff, isn't it? She muttered. Mr. Green called me. He said you revoked it. He said you opened a new account. You really went behind my back. No, I said, my hand resting on my cane. I went in front of you. I told you for months I wanted to talk about money, and you always said you were handling it. I decided to handle my part myself. The first confrontation with Maddie came that evening. She got home from school, saw the social worker's card on the counter, saw the strain in her mother's face, and put two and two together. She stomped into my room without knocking, her sneakers squeaking on the hardwood. "Are you trying to get me arrested?" she demanded, eyes blazing. The sight of her, so young and furious, twisted something in me. She was still the girl who'd painted my nails glittery purple 2 summers ago, who'd cried into my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke up with her over text. She was also the girl who'd held a phone while I lay on the floor. Both things were true. "I'm trying to make sure I'm safe," I said. "That video, it was a joke," she exploded, hands flying up. "You didn't even get hurt that bad. You're walking around. People do prank videos all the time." She said prank, like it was a magic word that turned harm into fun. "Do your prank videos usually involve someone actually getting injured?" I asked. "And posting their fears so strangers can laugh?" She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they would disappear into her skull. "You never understand anything," she said. "You grew up in the dinosaur age. It's just how it is now." I felt a flare of anger then, small but hot. "I may be old-fashioned," I said, my voice steady, "but I know the difference between laughing with someone and laughing at them. And so do you if you're honest." Her mouth snapped shut. For a moment, the bravado cracked, and I saw something else. Embarrassment, maybe even shame. But then it was gone. "Whatever," she muttered. "Now everyone at school is talking about how my grandma called the cops on me. Thanks a lot." She turned to storm out. "Madison," I said, and she paused at the door. "A judge is going to see that video, not because I hate you, because I need the truth to be visible to someone who can help set things right. What you did hurt me, deeply, whether you meant to or not." Her shoulders stiffened. "Then maybe you should have helped yourself up," she snapped, without looking back, "since you don't need anyone." Then she was gone, the door banging behind her. The second discussion was calmer, but in some ways more insidious. 2 weeks later, after the Adult Protective Services worker had visited the house and interviewed all of us separately, Karen's ex-husband, Dave, asked if he could swing by to chat. He'd always fancied himself a mediator, the reasonable one. He sat on the edge of the living room couch with one ankle crossed over the other, his polo shirt tucked neatly into his jeans, giving me what he probably thought was his most disarming smile. My cane rested beside my recliner, my phone on the side table just within reach. "Lori," he began, "you know I care about you. You've always been great with Maddie. None of us want things to get ugly here. Court, judges, all that. It's a lot, especially at your age." He said, "Your age," the way someone might say, "in your condition." My jaw tightened. "What is it you're suggesting, exactly?" I asked. He spread his hands. "Maybe we can just settle this in the family. You could tell that social worker it was a misunderstanding. Teenagers, you know." He chuckled. "You could move your money back into the joint account, and Karen could keep managing things." No one needs to drag a judge into this. Think about how stressful that would be for you. If you've ever sat across from someone who's trying to sound like they're doing you a favor while nudging you back into a box, you know how that feels. There's a particular kind of pressure in the air, like humidity before a storm. I picked up my cane, partly because my leg was beginning to ache, partly because I liked the way it felt in my hand when I needed to remember my own spine. "I've thought about it," I said, "for weeks, and I'm still going to that hearing." Dave sighed, as if I were a stubborn child. "Look, judges don't love it when older folks are, influenced into making changes they don't really understand. They might think someone's putting you up to this. You don't want them thinking you're confused." "I'm not confused," I replied, the words coming out clearer than I expected. I was confused when I thought being grateful meant I had to accept being mocked and kept out of decisions. I was confused when I believed my only choice was between being lonely in my own place or useful in someone else's. "I'm not confused anymore," his smile faltered. "You're making a mistake," he said flatly. "You'll regret this when you're in some apartment alone, and no one's there when you fall." The cruelty in that sentence was almost casual. He'd taken my worst fear and turned it into a weapon. I looked him squarely in the eye. "When I fell here," I said, "someone was there. She chose to film it. Being alone in an apartment with a call button and neighbors my age sounds safer than that." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He left with tight lips and a muttered, "Good luck with all that." The day of the hearing came quicker than I expected. It wasn't a criminal trial, thank God, but a protective order and elder abuse hearing in family court, requested by Adult Protective Services and supported by my legal aid lawyer. The judge would decide whether I needed any legal protections, whether there had been neglect, and whether any conditions would be placed on my living situation and my granddaughter's behavior. Karen drove us there, the silence in the car heavy enough to press on my chest. I wore the same blouse I'd worn to the senior center, my best slacks, and my most comfortable black shoes. My cane clicked against the courthouse's tiled floor in a steady rhythm as we made our way to the courtroom. The smell of coffee and paper was everywhere, mixed with a faint whiff of old wood. Sitting at the petitioner's table with Mr. Green, I felt both very small and strangely solid. My phone lay in my purse, the video file saved and backed up twice. My cane rested upright against my knee. When the judge entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and silver streaks in her hair, the room hushed. Hearing our case number called made my stomach flip. APS presented their findings first, the interview notes, the documentation of my financial contributions, the details of the fall, and the aftermath. Karen's lawyer, a man in an expensive suit we could all ill afford, tried to frame it as a regrettable but isolated incident, and stressed how much my daughter had sacrificed to take me in. I listened, feeling my heartbeat in my throat, until Mr. Green stood and said, "Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to play a short video." The lights dimmed slightly as the clerk set up a screen facing the judge. Karen shifted uncomfortably beside me. Maddie, sitting behind us, shrank down in her seat. The room seemed to hold its breath. When the clip began, the familiar scene filled the monitor. My kitchen, the coffee cup tipping, my body falling. The sound echoed oddly in the courtroom. Maddie's high, bright laugh bouncing off wooden panels, the dull thud of my hip hitting the floor. The judge's face stayed stern, but I saw her jaw tighten. When the camera zoomed in on my face, when my own fear stared back at me from 3 weeks earlier, I heard a rustle in the benches behind us. A low murmur quickly hushed. Then the video ended. Silence settled again, heavy and thick. Mr. Green spoke into it. "This is not a prank," he said quietly. "This is an elder in visible pain whose fall was delayed in being responded to because the person present chose to record it for public amusement. The video was posted online with mocking commentary and remains accessible. The same elder's income has been funneled into a household where she has no legal stake in the property, and her attempts to discuss finances have been brushed aside." The judge looked at me then, really looked, over the rim of her glasses. "Ms. Walker," she said, "do you wish to say anything?" My hands trembled slightly as I pushed myself up with my cane, but my voice, when it came, surprised me with its steadiness. "My granddaughter filmed me falling and laughed," I said, using the very words that had haunted me. "When I saw that video, Your Honor, I felt less like a person and more like a clown slipping on a banana peel. I love my family. I understand teenagers make mistakes, but I also understand my own worth. I am not a joke. I needed help, and I was entertainment instead. That's why I asked for help from people outside my family. Not to punish them, to protect myself." Behind me, I heard a quiet sniff. I didn't turn to see who it was. The judge listened without interrupting. Then she turned to Maddie. "Miss," she said, her voice neither gentle nor cruel, just firm, "do you understand the seriousness of what you did?" Maddie's bravado was gone. Her shoulders were hunched, her eyes red. I didn't think," she whispered. "Everyone posts stuff. It was stupid. I didn't think she'd see it." The judge's eyebrows lifted. "You didn't think she'd see a publicly posted video of herself?" she asked. "Or you didn't think about how she would feel?" Maddie's mouth opened, then closed. A tear slid down her cheek. "Both," she admitted. She wasn't laughing now. Not with the footage on a screen the judge had just watched twice. Not with her mother's job, my living situation, and her own future behavior under scrutiny. That was when it hit me fully. She didn't laugh when the footage reached the judge. That laugh had been for her peers, for strangers, for herself. But here, in this room where actions had consequences, drawn in ink instead of emojis, there was no sound left in her but a shaky breath. The judge sighed, then delivered her decision. She granted me a protective order, not one that banned my daughter and granddaughter from seeing me altogether, but one that prohibited them from posting any images or videos of me online without my explicit consent, and mandated that any caregiving responsibilities be clearly defined and agreed upon. She recommended, strongly, that I move into housing where I had my own lease and control, and she ordered Karen to reimburse me for a portion of the household expenses I'd paid over the past year, acknowledging the imbalance. For Maddie, she ordered 50 hours of community service at a local nursing home and mandatory counseling on digital citizenship and elder respect. "If I see you back in this courtroom on a similar matter," she said directly to my granddaughter, "we will be talking about more than community service." Finally, she looked back at me. "Ms. Walker, you are clearly capable of making your own decisions. I urge you to continue to use your voice and seek support when you need it." Walking out of that courthouse, my cane's tip catching every tiny crack in the sidewalk, I felt lighter and tired all at once. Karen walked a few paces ahead, shoulders tense. Maddie trailed behind, unusually quiet. At the car, Karen finally spoke. "So that's it," she said bitterly. "We're the monsters, and you're the victim, and now everything's official." I shook my head. "No," I said softly. "You're my family. But the way things were, that couldn't continue. I'm moving into one of those senior apartments the center told me about. My name will be on the lease. My money will be mine to decide about. You're welcome to visit. I'll still be your mother and your grandmother. But I won't be your unpaid housekeeper or your secret camera subject anymore." Karen's eyes flashed, then filled. "Who's going to help with Maddie's rides? With the dog? With—" She trailed off, realizing, I think, how that sounded. "We'll figure it out," she muttered, more to herself than to me. "We always do." I wanted to hug her, to smooth her hair like when she was little, but I also knew if I reached out first right then, I might end up taking it all back. So instead, I simply opened the car door and steadied myself with my cane as I got in. Moving out 2 weeks later was both heartbreaking and oddly exhilarating. The senior apartment building was only 10 minutes away, a squat brick place with a small garden out front and a bulletin board in the lobby full of notices about potlucks and movie nights. My new unit had a little balcony that looked out over a patch of maple trees. The first time I walked in, my cane echoing softly on the laminate floor, the emptiness felt more like promise than loneliness. My church friends helped me bring over my few pieces of furniture: my bed, my dresser, the recliner that had fit my body for years, and, of course, my cane leaned against the wall by the front door, ready. I opened a checking account in just my name and had my pension and Social Security rerouted there. APS closed my case with a note that the situation had stabilized with increased autonomy for the elder. It wasn't a fairy tale. Karen was cool with me on the phone for a while. Sometimes she'd sound almost normal and then slip in a comment like, "Must be nice not having to deal with a teenager every day," and I'd feel that old guilt tug. But in my own place, with my own bills to pay and my own grocery lists to make, I found a rhythm. I made simple meals for one, using my cane to move between stove and sink without having to navigate anyone else's mess. I went to bingo night and lost spectacularly to a woman named Helen who swore by her lucky troll doll. I took chair yoga classes and laughed the first time I tried to balance on one leg and grabbed my cane like a dance partner. I slept through the night more often. The little digital clock by my bed still glowed, but now, when I stared at it at 2:13 a.m., it was sometimes because I'd woken from a dream about Mark smiling, not because I was listening for slamming doors. A month into my new life, Maddie showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was on the couch, knitting a lopsided scarf while a rerun of some game show droned in the background. When the knock came, soft but insistent, I shuffled to the door with my cane and peered through the peephole, startled to see her there in her oversized hoodie and ripped jeans, hair in a messy bun. When I opened the door, the hallway smelled of someone's spaghetti dinner and her perfume. Something sweet and artificial. "Hi," she said, stuffing her hands in her pockets. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She stood in the middle of the living room, looking around at the small space, the crochet blanket on the back of the couch, the framed photo of Mark on the shelf, the potted plant my neighbor had given me, that I was trying hard not to kill. "It's nice," she said, sounding surprised. "I thought it'd be like—" She trailed off. "Like a hospital?" I supplied gently. She shrugged, embarrassed. "Sort of." She perched on the edge of the chair across from me. For a few moments we just sat there, the silence punctuated by the faint tick of the wall clock. Finally, she blurted, "I'm sorry." The words came out in a rush. "I was such a jerk, Nana. The counselor made me watch that video like 3 times with no sound and then talk about it, and I wanted to crawl under a rock. I don't know why I laughed. I don't know what I thought. Everyone at school does dumb videos, and I forgot you were you." Her eyes filled. "They make us talk to these old people at the nursing home for my community service, and one of them fell last week, just tripped on the rug, and we all freaked out. No one filmed it. I kept thinking, why did I film you?" She wiped her nose on her sleeve. "I hate that I'm the kind of person who did that." Hearing that, something inside me unclenched a fraction. "You're the kind of person who did that once," I said. "You don't have to be the kind of person who keeps doing it." She nodded miserably. "Mom says you hate us now," she whispered. "That we lost you." My cane rested across my lap. I ran my fingers along the carved heart on its handle, feeling the indentations. "I don't hate you," I said. "I love you. That's why it hurts so much. That's why I had to treat it seriously. Love doesn't mean letting anything slide." She looked at me, really looked, maybe for the first time since she was little. "Are you happier here?" she asked. The honest answer surprised me. "Yes," I said. "I'm not happy you and your mom are upset. But I'm glad to have my own space, my own account, my own peace." She bit her lip. "Can I still come over?" she asked in a small voice. "Like to hang out? Not to film you for views," she added quickly, rolling her eyes at herself. "Just to be here." I smiled then, a real smile that felt like it came from somewhere deep. "You can come over," I said. "We can watch old movies, and you can teach me how to use that photo filter thing you like that puts puppy ears on everyone." She laughed, a genuine laugh that didn't sting this time. "Deal," she said. Then more shyly, "Do you need anything, like help with your phone or, I don't know, the stove?" It was such a reversal of our old dynamic that for a moment I wanted to say, "No, I've got it," just to prove I could. But I reminded myself that allowing help when it's offered with respect instead of assumed isn't the same as being used. "Actually," I said, holding up my phone, "I could use some help figuring out how to, block people from tagging me in videos. The lawyer showed me once, but I forgot." She scooted her chair closer, took the phone, and started walking me through it, narrating each step. As she talked, our shoulders brushed. My cane spun slowly against my palm, not because I needed it in that moment to stand, but because I liked the feeling of its familiar weight. It had seen me through humiliation and through justice. It was seeing me now in this fragile, hopeful middle ground, where consequences and forgiveness coexisted. If you're listening to this and you're around my age, maybe you recognize pieces of your own story in mine. Maybe you've given up more than you ever thought you would, your house, your privacy, your money, your pride, to stay close to family, telling yourself it's just what mothers do. And maybe, just maybe, you've had a moment where you realized the people who were supposed to be holding you up were also leaning on you so hard you could barely breathe. I can't tell you what to do in your situation. I'm not a judge. I'm just a woman with a cane, a phone, and a hip that still aches when it rains. But I can tell you this, you are allowed to expect respect. You are allowed to say, "This is not okay," even if the person hurting you is someone you rock to sleep. And you are allowed to ask for help from people who aren't in the same house, the same bloodline, when you need someone to see clearly what you've been trying to live through. My cane, once a symbol of everything I didn't want to face about getting older, is something different to me now. When I hang it on the hook by my door at night in this little apartment, it reminds me not just that my body needs support, but that my spirit is allowed to ask for it in ways that don't erase me. It was there on the day I fell, lying helplessly by the fridge while my granddaughter laughed. It was there when I walked into that courtroom and stood to speak for myself. It's here now, leaning in the corner while I talk to you, my hand resting on its worn handle between words. It is, in its simple, sturdy way, proof that I can both accept help from something outside myself and still choose where I'm going. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you, truly. It means more than you know to have your company while I tell these pieces of my life. I'd love to know where you're listening from, what city or little town, what country. So if you feel like it, come down to the comments and tell me, so we can all feel a bit less like we're going through these things alone. If stories like this speak to you and you'd like to help me keep sharing them, you can use that super thanks button here on YouTube. Every little bit of support is a kindness I don't take for granted. And if you'd like to stay a while longer, there should be a couple more story videos popping up on your screen. Ones I chose especially for those of you who know what it is to give and finally learn to draw a line. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next life story. Until we meet again in the next video, please take gentle care of yourselves.